For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
I found it to be very straightforward and trustworthy. I was able to get a sense of his soul. I wouldn't have invited him to my ranch if I didn't trust him.
The part that Russia has played in the international community since the 11th of September has been remarkable. I mean, we have cooperation today that would have been really unthinkable just a short time ago.
Der sehr freundschaftlichen Zusammenarbeit zwischen Russland und Deutschland, die vermutlich nie so gut war, wie sie jetzt ist Vertrauen.
I am confident that this new level of cooperation between NATO's members and Russia will now change the world and for the better.
Поэтому предлагаю с этого момента штаб-квартиру надо переименовать в Дом Советов. Думаю, что это неплохое предложение.
I will declare that to be a joke.
Do I trust him? Yeah, I trust him.
Russian heavy guns were firing at Georgian positions inside Georgia.
Buildings are burning from the last airstrike, and people are warning that the Russian Air Force may soon be back.
I brought with me today a big delegation of British business, all with an interest in expanding their trade with Russia.
We seek a significant and sensible approach to economic development across our continent, and to that end will now be closely interconnected for decades to come.
J'ai trouvé un homme très au fait de ses dossiers, très calme, très intelligent.
I'm aware of the extraordinary work that you've done on behalf of the Russian people.
Breaking news from Ukraine. Overnight, armed men seized control of 2 government buildings as Putin announces he's sending troops.
Many of Putin's critics have mysteriously become ill or died.
Apparent vicious political assassination of one of President Vladimir Putin's most outspoken critics.
A new report about Russian interference in the presidential election. Next, a look at how strong the evidence is that points to the Putin government.
Former Russian spy is in a critical condition in hospital in
Investigators suspect the Kremlin could be behind the incident in Salisbury on Sunday.
He says great things about me. I'm going to say great things about him. He's been a leader far more than our president has been a leader.
Wouldn't it be great if we actually got along with Russia? Am I wrong in saying that? Wouldn't it be great?
I believe that President Putin really feels, and he feels strongly, that he did not meddle in our election.
He's not going into Ukraine, okay? Just so you understand. He's not going to go into Ukraine.
The Putin that we've seen on television is increasingly inscrutable. Part of that is strategic. He is trying to make it very difficult for his opponents, whether within Russia or outside of Russia, to guess his intentions or mobilize against him.
Что ответ России будет незамедлительным и приведет вас к таким последствиям, с которыми вы в своей истории еще никогда не сталкивались.
A lot of people obviously are asking, has Putin changed? Is something going on in his understanding of the world or in his ability to understand the world? The reality is we've been watching Putin now for 20 plus years that he's been in power, and he's changed quite a bit. It does feel like we're seeing a Putin who's more isolated, and it's not just about, sitting at the other end of a very long table from the people who are supposed to be advising him. It does feel that a lot of the messages that maybe he needs to hear are not coming across, either because people are unwilling to express them, or because 20 years into his reign, he trusts his own judgment more than he trusts the judgment of those around him.
Говорите прямо.
Я поддержу предложение о признании.
Поддержу или поддерживаю? Говорите прямо, Сергей.
Поддерживаю предложение.
Хорошо, пожалуйста, садитесь. Спасибо. Владимир Александрович.
Early on in his presidency, Putin had these sort of marathon press conferences, he calls them. This was always a way of him both showing that he's very much in command, that he has a strong understanding of what's going on in the country, but also to play all sides of the political equation. He was very much trying to keep everybody on board. Putin famously was the first world leader to call George W. Bush on September 11th to express his condolences, but also to offer support.
I looked the man in the eye. I found him to be very straightforward and trustworthy. I was able to get a sense of his soul.
He gave up on that essentially beginning in 2012, 2013, as he began to face a much more concerted opposition at home. And he found that in order to sort of mobilize against that opposition, it was useful to pick up on conservative values, on the Russian Orthodox Church, pushing against LGBT rights. A key moment, Putin is coming back, campaigning for re-election as president, and gives his one major campaign speech. He takes the stage at Moscow's main football stadium, and as the snow is falling, gives this speech about, again, how this isn't just a campaign for political office, this is a campaign for the salvation of Russia.
Мы с вами народ-победитель. Это у нас в генах, в нашем генном коде. Это передается у нас из поколения в поколение. Мы и сейчас победим. И я вас хочу спросить, мы победим?
Thus, his opponents aren't just Russian citizens who imagine a different political future for Russia, but they are agents of the West. We have his 2014 speech around the annexation of Crimea, in which he's harking back again to centuries of Russian history to legitimize this seizure of territory from a sovereign country, creating, in fact, a lot of political euphoria in Russia, and a very powerful rally around the flag effect.
In our hearts, we know that Crimea has always been and always will remain an inalienable part of Russia.
In many ways, that speech was scary to a lot of people at the time, but it will look and feel now like halcyon days compared to the anger of the speeches that he's given in the lead up to the war that he's launched in Ukraine. He has a very strong demand for control. He seems to genuinely believe that Russia will disintegrate if there is not a very strong state that is able to dominate, if not monopolize, most political, economic, and indeed social activity within the country.
Владимир Владимирович, здравствуйте. Я студент и учусь в Санкт-Петербургском государственном университете. Хочу спросить, правда ли, что у вас много двойников? И еще, как вы относитесь к тем опасностям, которые несет в нашу жизнь искусственный интеллект и нейросети? Спасибо.
Гражданин из Санкт-Петербурга не представился.
Да. Вот я смотрю, вы можете быть на меня похожи и говорите моим голосом. Но я подумал и решил, что похожим на себя и говорить моим голосом должен только один человек. И этим человеком буду я. Вот так один из наших деятелей шутил когда-то. Вот. Но что касается искусственного интеллекта, да, вот это мой первый двойник, кстати сказать.
Before we move on, Mark, what do you mean by he's not the original Putin?
Well, you just look at just go and look at the pictures of the original Putin. I mean, you've had this guy in charge of Russia for 26 years. The original Putin was KGB, very nasty man. This version of Putin appeared about 10 years ago, and I don't know if it's the second or third or fourth, but it's certainly not. It's just not the same man. And if you look at what's been going on with Putin in recent years, and I think the Tucker Carlson interviews and also the little videos that Tucker's been making are also very interesting. I'm not saying I trust those either, but also very interesting because you're showing a Russia that has beautiful public transport, has cheap, non-genetically modified organic food for sale at 25% of the price that we pay in the West for the poison we get in Tesco's. And it's which is obviously not, it's not obviously not Putin. It's not the same guy. And what he's been doing really in Ukraine, in my opinion, is cleaning out biolabs and child trafficking centers. And I believe that version of Putin is working with Trump, because if you go back to Trump's tour in 2017, when he went around the world and he handed over things to the world leaders, including the Pope. He gave him a big file. He got the sword dance in Saudi Arabia, which is reserved for kings. And there was that famous scene where Putin passed the football to Trump in that press conference. So I do think that they're actually working together behind the scenes, and that there's good things going on, because I have to say to the viewers that I am an apocalyptimist. I do believe the title of my book is called God Wins, and I believe that we are watching something that's irregular warfare of the highest level, and the bad guys effectively have mainly been taken out. So what we're watching is something designed to show the hypocrisy of Western governments, so that people, as part of a wake up, because trying to wake up people that have all injected themselves voluntarily and sometimes not voluntarily with a bioweapon, the cognitive dissonance is so deep and the brainwashing has been so deep that I believe that the same techniques that have been used to brainwash us in the first place our entire lives are being used to reverse that brainwashing, which is what I think we're seeing right now.
Wow, that's so deep. Hey, it's Monday and we've entered a level of depth which I thoroughly approve of. You know, the thing is that I'm looking in the comments, some people are saying well, one person says not sure about Putin, but Biden definitely. And the thing is I think this is an interesting sub-narrative that we hear often, don't we, on social media, where people say, no, that isn't the same person. You would never, ever, ever hear this on legacy media. And it doesn't mean that I support the idea, but I think it's really important to be able to facilitate that discussion for people to be heard. And more power to elbow. Joe Biden, the original, had proper blue eyes. The ones they have now have black eyes, says Wee Fat Shug. What are your thoughts about Biden? You think he's the real one?
Well, I know he's not. You've only got to look at his face. I mean, it's not the same guy. I've been saying that consistently for 4 years. I mean, that's just not the same guy. Of course, it's not the real Biden. And you know, the White House has been under quarantine for the last 4 years. It's been fenced off. We're watching a movie. There's so much proof. I mean, and the comedy with Joe Biden is hilarious. And this is what makes me think good guys are in charge of him. You got him tripping up all the time. You've got multiple Joe Bidens. 1 minute he can't walk up the stairs. The next minute he's got 30-year-old legs falling off a bike. That's not Joe Biden.
Fascinating. I'm absolutely fascinated. So let's move on to something completely different. Tell me you believe in this, right? The farmers' protests. They're really happening, aren't they?
Now let's go to President Joe Biden, who's had yet another incoherent press conference. This one was so bad that his handlers moved in to cut the question and answer session short. Speaking in Hanoi, the president, well, he was confused.
Look, nobody likes having celebrated international meetings if you don't know what you want at the meeting, if you don't have a game plan. He may have a game plan. He just hasn't shared it with me. But I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed.
Look, he wants to lie down, and I think we're all on board with that. I think he needs a lie down. But when he's speaking in full sentences, he says dumb stuff like this.
And the only existential threat humanity faces, even more frightening than a nuclear war, is global warming going above 1.5 degrees in the next 10 years. And we're in real trouble. There's no way back from that.
What do you think about that we've got to be far more worried about global warming being the end of the world than nuclear war?
Rita, this whole performance by Joe Biden, I will say, is an utter embarrassment to America. I actually am at the point now where I almost can't watch this anymore. It's just so demoralising.
Don't say that, because I've got a Biden extravaganza
yes, we want the viewers
later.
To tune into the Biden extravaganza.
So you need to watch
Absolutely do. But Rita, I just want to get that surely someone should just get that microphone and save him from these embarrassing situations where he makes no sense. He speaks in riddles. How on earth is this man running the country?
Well, yeah, as someone said, you know, is he running the country, or is the person who controls his teleprompter running the country?
We're watching a movie. There's so much proof.
He just hasn't shared it with me. But I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed.
Nunca se ve bailando en la pista sola. Llega a montarla con sus amigas gastando el dólar.
someone said, is he running the country or is the person who controls his teleprompter running the country?